Hey guys, welcome to the Redux Toolkit crash course. If you have any experience with React Redux, then you know how disgusting the React Redux setup is. You have to write tons of boilerplate codes just to get started. Then you also have to deal with weird namings like reducer, actions, payload, then state immutability and so on. What if we can abstract away all of the complexities? What if we can just set up the Redux within 1 or 2 files? That would be great, right? Well, we have a solution. That is called Redux Toolkit. Redux Toolkit is a toolset for Redux development. It abstracts away all of the complexities. You can set up Redux within few lines of code. It also lets you write Redux code in standard way. And they also have good TypeScript support for TypeScript development. And we're going to learn Redux Toolkit by building a simple to-do application. The UI of this application is built with Material UI. We can add a to-do here, for example sleep, then add normal to-do. Okay, you can see that our to-do has been added. Then again code. We can also add a to-do asynchronously. So if I click on add asyncTodo, you can see the loader. It will be shown for 5 seconds. Okay, so our asynchronous to-do is also listed here. We can also delete the to-do. We can also reset the to-do to delete all of these to-dos. And all of this state is handled by Redux. And after watching the video, you're going to say Redux is super easy. So if you are interested, hit the like and subscribe button. That really motivates me to create more content like this for you. Now, before we get started, you need to know a few things. You have to know Reactjs. And definitely you have to know Redux. This video is not about Redux basics. You have to know Redux before you jump into Redux Toolkit. So just get the basics of Redux. You don't need to be advanced in this. Then come back in this video. And Material UI is absolutely optional. I'm not going to focus on the styling part of the application. I'm really going to focus on the Redux Toolkit. Okay? So if you have these two basic skills, then you are good to go. So if you have those skills, let's get started. Now for this project, I'm going to use create React app for simplicity. So let's create one, npx create React app, and my app name will be Redux Toolkit crash course. So let's create an app. Okay, so our app is done. Let's cd into the folder. Okay, so let's install some dependencies for Redux Toolkit and Material UI, which is the UI framework that I'm going to use. So I need these packages: Redux Toolkit, React Redux, Material UI Core, and Material UI Icons. Now, while the packages are getting installed, let me give you a shameless plug of one of my projects. As human beings, sometimes we feel like we are not good enough to succeed in life. Everyone is better than us. This is what we call imposter syndrome. We can face this at any stage of our life. And modern social media is increasing the problem, because people only share their success stories but not their failures. You have to fail before you succeed in life. So we get the misconceptions and lose our self-esteem. Then what if we share not only our success stories but also our failure stories? That would be great, because seeing someone else doing the same mistake is a good feeling for everyone. We will not have the misconceptions of success, and we will realize that everyone makes mistakes and it is very normal. And that could solve the imposter syndrome problem. So I have developed a project. Its name is Confession, which is a fully open source social media application. Here you will have the features of a social media application like creating a post, uploading pictures, following users, and so on. Please try and share this application with your friends and family. The link will be on the description. Also, you are very welcome to contribute to this project. The GitHub link will also be on the description. So thank you very much for your time. Let's get back to the original video. Okay, so our packages has been installed. First, let's just clean up the project. cd src. I don't need all of these files, so I'm going to delete them. Git rm, because this is a Git repository. I don't need these files. Now let's clean up the app.js and index.js file. I'll open up the project on my editor. So index.js, no need of CSS, report web vitals, and this shit. And for the app.js, I will also remove these things. I don't need these imports. Okay, so our cleanup is done. Now let's build the UI of our application. If you don't want to watch it, you can skip the section. I will put the timestamps, but I will just copy paste the code, and because I don't want to waste time by coding all of this code. Okay, so these are the code that we need. These are the imports, and we have commented out the to-do list component because this does not exist. We have two states. One is for the to-do input value, and this one is for showing the input field. We have two event handlers. One is for adding normal to do, another one is for add asynchronous to do. And for the JSX, we have a grid container which will make everything at the center like this. We have the header, then we have two buttons. One is add icon, another one is the rotate left icon. First one is the add button, another one is the reset button, which will reset the list, and add button will just open up the input field like this. Okay, this input field, and we have two more buttons for this input field. First one is the add normal to do, another one is for add asynchronous to do, and both of these buttons are hooked up with these two event handlers. Okay, so that's it for this file. Let's just create the to-do list component. I'm going to create a directory here, components, and inside the components I will create a file, to do list.jsx, and again I will just paste the code here. Alright, so this is the code here. We have a list container, and inside the list container we have an array of list. For now this is just a dummy array. Later we are going to loop over our state. So this is the list item, and this is the list item text just telling us to do for now. And we have an action button to the right of every single list, which is a delete icon like this one to delete our to do. Okay, so let's just comment out these lines. Okay, so let's just save the file and let's run the dev server with yarn start. Cannot resolve components to do list. Let's see. Oh, okay, so I have made a typo here. This should be capital C. So let's save the file. Okay, so as you can see that our application is working without functionalities, and also the input field. Okay, so let's work on the main section of this video, which is Redux Toolkit. So this is Redux Toolkit documentation website. Please check that out. Don't watch just videos, they have a pretty good documentation. Now before we start writing any Redux Toolkit code, let me clear a simple concept of Redux Toolkit. Now we know that Redux is a global state, right? Just like this bread. We can think of this bread as our Redux state, and this bread is consist of a lot of slices like this. When we combine these slices, we get this kind of bread. So we can think of these slices as our reducer in Redux. When we combine those reducers, we get a Redux store. And inside this reducer, we have a substate of the Redux state. Then we get some action type and we do some operation based on that action type. Now in Redux Toolkit, things are a little bit different. We call each of these slices as a slice, and those slices contain the Redux substate, and those reducers are very different than our normal Redux reducer, and you are going to see why. It will be easier to explain with code. So let's get started. So I will close these files. So inside the source folder, I'm going to create another directory, Redux. And inside the Redux folder, I'm going to create a file called store. This is the global Redux store, right? So store.js. And we need to import configure store function from Redux Toolkit. This is a named import. And now I'm going to create a variable store, and I will call configure store. And configure store takes an object as argument, and inside this object we need to nest the reducer object. So reducer. Now inside this reducer you have to add the slice reducer that we're going to create later, and we're going to add them to our store. But now let's just export it as default. And we also need to wrap our whole application with a store provider. So let's open up the index.js file, and I need to import provider from React Redux. And now let's also import the store. Import store from /redux/store. So provider, and provider will take store prop, which will be equals to store. And let's wrap the app. Okay, so that's it for this file. Our application will now have the provider. Now let's create our slices. So I'm going to create a directory, slices. In here I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call it todo slice.js. First of all, we need to import CreateAslice function from Redux Toolkit. And now let's create a slice, const todo slice. And we need to call CreateAslice here, which takes an object as argument. In here we need to pass some properties. First is the name property, and this name property is important. I'm going to call it todo list. And we need our initial state property. I'm going to create the initial state separately. So const initial state, which will have a tasks field, and it will be an array. We're going to store array of strings, which will be the to-do names, and the initial state will be initial state. And now we need reducers. Now inside the reducer subject we need to create some methods. Those methods will look like normal reducer functions, but they are kind of different. You can think of them as a Redux action. So what type of action do you want for your to-do list? You want to add a to-do, you want to remove to-do, you want to have a reset to-do list action, right? So we can add them as an action inside the reducer subject. So let's create one. Add to do, which will be a method, actually function. Now this function or method, whatever you say, will have two arguments normally. First one is the state, and second one is the action object. And you can do whatever you want with the function body. Now this looks similar, right, to our Redux reducer function, but there's a difference. In our action object, we know that we have a payload and we also have a type. And in normal Redux, we create a reducer function, which we have a state and an action object. Then we do some operation based on the action type. And then we also need to create some action creator function. And from those function, we need to return some object, which have a payload and a type. That's a lot of work to do, right? But Redux Toolkit simplifies everything for you. So you can think of this reducer function as an action, and you name those reducer function as an action. You do the state manipulation inside the function body, and Redux Toolkit will automatically generate actions out of this reducers method. And you don't have to check for any kind of action type. Redux Toolkit will also add that action type for you. So every action creator function, reducer function is everything inside one single slice. Okay, so you can see that Redux Toolkit has simplifies a lot of things for us. So we need to add a to-do. We don't need to care about the type, and I will just destructure the state and pull out the tasks. And you know that payload is just an argument that you pass while dispatching an action. So this payload will be a string, our to-do name. So we want to just push the payload to the tasks list. So tasks.push, and we need to pass payload. Now you might have noticed that I have mutated the state. We know that in Redux we should not mutate the state, but we can do that in Redux Toolkit, because Redux Toolkit is using immer behind the scene, and immer lets us mutate the state, and behind the scenes immer will automatically generate a new state for us, so you don't have to care about that. Next we want to remove to do, and I'm also going to destructure the state tasks, then destructure action. We want to get a payload, and the payload will be the index of the to do which we want to delete. So I'm going to use the splice method, tasks. So tasks dot splice, and splice takes two arguments. First one is the starting index, and the second argument is the number of items that you want to delete. I want to start it from the payload, then I want to delete only one item. Okay, so that's it for our remove to do. And another action or reducer, whatever you say, I want to add is reset list, and I just want to set my state to the initial state. To do that, you just need to return a new state here. So I'm just going to pass the initial state, and this will just reset our state. Okay, now we need to export reducer and actions from this file. The createSlice function returns us an object, and that object has a reducer property and an action property. We want to export them. So export const from to do slice dot actions, and I want to destructure the actions, add to do, then remove to do, then reset list. So we are just destructuring the actions from to do slice dot actions, and we are also exporting that. And we also need to export the reducer by default. Export default to do slice dot reducer. Okay, so let's add the reducer to our store. So I will import the to-do reducer, from /slices/to-do slice, and inside the reducer we need to create a state name. I will call it to-do, and I'm just going to pass to-do reducer. Okay, so let's save the file. And if you have Redux DevTools installed in your browser, then Redux Toolkit will automatically enable the DevTool for you. You don't need to do anything. Okay, so this is the Redux DevTool, and we have our state, and we have an empty tasks array. So let's add the state to our components, and we are going to use Redux hooks for that. So let's open up the components, then to-do list. Okay, so let's import the hooks from React Redux. So we have imported useSelector hook and useDispatch hook. useSelector hook is for getting the state, and useDispatch is for just dispatch. So let's get the state first. So const from useSelector, and useSelector hook takes a function as an argument, and state is the first argument of that callback function, and we need to pass a specific state value. We don't want the whole Redux state. We want state.todo state. Okay, so state is the whole Redux state, and to-do state is just a slice of the whole state. Okay, so inside the to-do state we have a tasks array. We only want that for now. So instead of the dummy array, we're going to loop over the tasks array, tasks, and instead of list item text, we're going to pass the items, actually item. Okay, so let's save the file, and we should not see any kind of text. Okay, as you can see that we don't have any to do, so that means it's working. And we also need to dispatch an action, which is remove to do. So I will import that. Okay, so this is the remove to do action. Let's call the useDispatch hook, const dispatch equals to useDispatch. Now useDispatch hook returns us a dispatch function. So let's add a event handler to the icon button, not the icon itself. Okay, on click. So on click we want to call the dispatch function, dispatch, and inside the dispatch we need to call the remove to do, and as an argument we need to pass the index, and this index will be used as the payload. Okay, so let's just save the file. Okay, so we have an error that cannot resolve. Actually, this should be not redux/todo slice. It will be slices/todo slice. So let's save the file again. Okay, so we don't have any error. Let's open up the app.js file, and I will also import the hooks and the actions. Okay, so we need the useDispatch hook and these actions from our to-do slice. Now let's add our functionality. Again, call the useDispatch hook, and inside the add normal to do we want to dispatch the add to do action. So dispatch add to do, and for the argument we need to pass the to do input, and also we need to reset the list. So just get to the icon button of rotate left icon, this one. We're going to add a onClick handler on click, and we need to call dispatch then reset list. We don't need to pass any kind of argument. And I think that's it. We should have our application ready. So let's save the file. Okay, so let's try to add some to do. So read. Okay, so as you can see that the read to do has been added to our list. Let's try another one. Code, then sleep. Okay, so as you can see that we can now add our to-dos. Okay, so now let's try to remove a to-do. I will try to remove code. Okay, it has been removed. Let's try sleep. Let's try read. Okay, so we can now remove our to-dos. Let's try to reset. I will add some more. So eat, sleep, code. Now let's try to reset it. Okay, so as you can see that all of our to-dos has been gone. Our state has been reset. And that was the main part of this video. Now I'm going to show you how to use redux-thunk within Redux toolkit to do any kind of asynchronous task. So I will just open up the to-do slice. Okay, so we need to use a function from Redux toolkit called CreateAsyncThunk. CreateAsyncThunk. So let's create an asyncthunk. Const addAsyncTodo, and also I'm going to export it. It will be CreateAsyncThunk. Now CreateAsyncThunk takes two parameters. So let me just show you the documentation. So this is the CreateAsyncThunk page, and now CreateAsyncThunk function takes three parameters. 2 parameter is necessary, last one is optional. So the first parameter is the type, a string, and a callback function, which is the payload creator. So the type will be something like this. First you add the slice name, then slash, then a word that describes your action. For example, here is request status. That means in the action we are sending a request to another server or API. Okay, and this type will be used to generate 3 action types. We know that in asynchronous task we have 3 states. First one is the pending state, second one is the fulfilled state, another one is the rejected. So CreateAsyncThunk will generate 3 action types for these 3 states from this action type. So, and you can see that how it is doing. So let's add the type. So first one will be the type string. So I will call it todo / addAsyncTodo. And the second one is the callback function. It will be an asynchronous function. And this is where we will handle our asynchronous logic. So async. Now this asynchronous function will take 2 parameters. First one is a single value, which is the argument that you pass while dispatching an action. So this will be our to-do name. So to-do name. And second one will be an object, which is the thunk API. And this has several properties and methods like dispatch, get state. I'm not going to bother about them. So I don't need them. Now in here I'm not going to do any kind of data fetching, but I'm going to mimic an asynchronous task. So I'm going to use promise here. So let's create a new promise. And we know that we have a callback function inside the promise constructor, which has resolve and rejects parameters, but I don't want to handle any rejection. Now inside the function body, I'm just going to add a set timeout of 5 seconds. It will be 5,000. Now just inside the function body, and after 5 seconds I'm going to resolve the to do. So resolve to do name. So let's await this. Const data await. So we have awaited our new promise. So let's just return that. Return data. So now we need to add extra reducers for this action. So we need to add a property extra reducers, which is a function actually, and this function takes a builder object as parameter, and this builder object has a method called addCase, and we need to call it builder.addCase. And this method takes two parameters. First one is the action type, and the action type will come from this addAsyncTodo variable. CreateAsyncThunk returns us an object, and that object has our three action types: pending, fulfilled, and reject. So we need to pass addAsyncTodo dot pending, and the second parameter will be the reducer, like these ones. So let's add the function, and again we will have the state and the action object. And now I want to add a new property to our state, which is loading, which will be false for now. So when the asynchronous task is on pending state, we want to set the loading to true so that we can show a circular progress icon to our front end. So I want to manipulate the state. So state dot loading will be true, and we need to call the addCase method again, but we can use method chaining here. So dot addCase, again an action type. This time we want to handle fulfilled state, so add asyncTodo dot fulfilled, and again our reducer. So again state, and this time we want the action object. I will destructure it, and I want the payload. Now this payload will be the data that is returned from this asynchronous function. So the payload will be our to do name. So we just want to push it to our task. So state.tasks.push, and just pass the payload. But before that, I want to set the loading to false. Okay, so that's it for this file. So let's save it, and let's go to app.js file. Now I want to dispatch the addAsyncTodo action. So let's just import that from this line, addAsyncTodo. Now I want to dispatch this action. Actually I have a name collision here, addAsyncTodo and addAsyncTodo handler. The both variable names are same. I'm just going to rename it as asyncTodo. Now I can dispatch that action. Dispatch asyncTodo, and the argument will be to do input. And now I want to add a circular progress component to our page from material UI. And I will also import use selector hook. So let's get this loading state. Const use selector, state will return state dot to do, and I want to get the loading. So before the input field, I will add the progress component. So if the loading state is true, then we want to show the circular progress component with some inline styling. Okay, so let's save the file and test it out. So sleep, add normal to do. Okay, it's working. Then code, let's add asynchronously. Okay, so it is not really working. Let's see, add async to do button, where it is. Okay, so add async to do. Yes, I had async to do. Actually, this function ran, but this dispatch didn't. Async to do. Alright, I have got the problem. Extra reducers property should not be inside the reducers property. Extra reducers should be inside the createSlice object outside reducers. So I will cut it and paste it outside reducers inside createSlice. So now let's save again. I will refresh the page. Okay, so now let's try it again. So sleep, add normal to do. Now let's try code, add async to do. Okay, now we can see the loader. Okay, you can see that the to do has been added asynchronously after 5 seconds. Let's try again. Sleep, code, sleep. Okay, so it has been added. We can delete it. We can also reset it. And we are done with this application. I hope now you will never say that Redux is hard to set up and work with. If the video has been helpful for you, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. It really motivates me to create more content just like this. And if you have any question, just let me know in the comment section. In the next video, I will do a simple project where I will show you how to build the Instagram-like carousel feature with React, Material UI and Swiper.js. You can test the application by going to this link, and obviously the link will be on the description too. And in this project you can see that this is a simple Instagram-like postcard, and here is our pictures, and I can swipe them like Instagram carousel, just like this. See the beautiful animation like Instagram. Okay, so I can swipe to the left and right. See, that is really beautiful. And that is super easy to do. So if you want to create this kind of carousel card, then hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the video. And also, if you have any suggestion, please let me know in the comment section or on any social media like Twitter, LinkedIn or Instagram as thatonjohn. So that's it for today, and I will see you in the next video.